Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm a social studies educator, historian, and host of this, the Everything is a Primary Source podcast. I'm also an avid collector of popular culture artifacts. I love what I find at thrift store outlets, garage sale leftovers, and what I spot just making my way around the built world. I enjoy sorting through boxes of free books and magazines, not to mention online collections like Internet Archive, and of course the Library of Congress. But you don't need to spend your time digging through bins or following online rabbit holes to get a look into the past. The movies and TV we watch, the books we read, and the games we play are all documents of the past. So is fashion, food, music, toys, even the roads we travel on and the places we live and work in. Everything is a primary source. This podcast is the result of exhibiting these kinds of artifacts in public, getting passersby to select an item they connect with, and then chatting with me to see what it says about the time, place, and people who made it. The conversation you are about to hear, therefore, is your history, my history, our history, through popular culture. All right, so I'm here with Jonathan Nichols, and you're the executive director of the Woodman Museum in Dover, New Hampshire. And welcome to the Everything is a Primary Source podcast.
Thank you very much.
And if you don't mind just telling us a little bit about the Woodman in itself, that's a primary source, wouldn't you say?
I would say so. It's a very huge primary source.
Yeah.
So the museum has been open since 1916. It was founded after the death of Annie Woodman, who in her will left $100,000 to set up a museum that showcased art, history, and science in the town of Dover. So using that, which equates to about $2.3 million of today's money, the trustees, the original trustees, set up a museum in her former home, as well as purchasing the Hale House that was owned by Senator John Parker Hale next door. And then through donation, we got the Dam Garrison, built by John Dam for his son William in 1675. And those three houses comprise our original campus back in the early 1910s. We also now have a fourth house, which is the Keith House. And that is our rotating art gallery space and carriage barn. But the other houses, the Woodman House has a lot of natural history in it. Everyone knows us for our 10-foot tall polar bear that is right on the main staircase.
Scares people as they turn the corner.
Yeah. We have military history, children's history, school history, and indigenous peoples' history. And then also going in there this summer is our Birthplace, the Ninja Turtles gallery.
Nice.
So that's going to be opening up. And then the Garrison, 1675. Just walking into that, you're walking into a, giant primary source of itself.
There's so many layers to the museum and the different time periods it represents.
Yeah, eclectic is the word that I hear a lot.
Well, I've been hearing your ads on the radio lately, and they sound fantastic. It's a really great way of depicting it in a short amount of time, because it's not a long commercial, but it's, as far as what we're dealing with. But do you do anything with, because I know that part of the marketing is talking about the year it was founded, and that's over 100 years old. But in your interpretation, when people are visiting, do you make a point of that, of saying these buildings and the way that they were put into a museum form, the arrangement of it, it's almost like you're walking back in time 100 years ago, because that's how museums tended to be back then.
So we do have an introduction to the museum in which we do talk about the founding of the museum itself. And there's a lot of exhibits that you'll see that are, close to that age as well. I think one of the more special exhibits that we have is our natural history exhibit. Our original curator, Melville Smith, and his wife, Mary Lombard Smith. Melville was the head taxidermist for the state of Maine at one point, and so that's why we have so much taxidermy in there. But all the scenery that that these pieces are put in front of were created and painted by Mary Lombard Smith back in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s. So even just the exhibit that you're looking at, for some of these exhibits, are a primary source. we are trying to modernize in a sense with trying to keep that feel, but have new ways to approach public history with like modern tactics of lighting, interactive elements, just new ways to curate.
Well, I'm so glad that you have that vision, because I think the temptation would be there for inheriting a museum like that, having a museum like that, to just keep it as is and be like, yes, take a walk through, look at the things behind glass, and then walk out.
Right.
But I like that you have that idea of like, okay, we're going to keep some of that as is, but then the rest of it we're going to modernize and get the modern person interested in it. That's a perfect segue, I think, to the topic that we're going to talk about, the pop culture topic we're going to talk about, which is Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah.
The character and I guess all his iterations and so forth, because he's an archaeologist. He says throughout most of the pictures about how important these artifacts are to be in the right hands, right? To
They
be
belong
put
in a
into
museum.
museums, or at least a giant warehouse that the government owns,
Yeah.
that things get lost in. But
Yep.
to have this, because future generations need to learn from it,
Right.
and not just try to seek power from them in some ways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm hoping we don't have like an Ark of a Covenant at the museum that if someone touches it, everyone starts melting.
that would be, and especially if you just like were alone when you were going through the your collection, and that just happens, and you're like, oh, nobody's here to see it.
No one's gonna find out until like they come in after the weekend.
Like, where's that melted skeleton come from?
Exactly.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Where'd John go?
Somebody opened up that. Because you do have some old stuff in there, like medieval armor.
We do. We have some chainmail voiders from the 1400s, a whole bunch of stuff, Crusader swords. Eclectic is the name of the game at the Woodman.
So Indiana Jones will love it there.
Oh, yeah.
He might have even worked there. So we have the question of, I'm going to combine two.
Okay.
Who likely made it, and what was the maker's role and status in society? So who made Indiana Jones? Who created him?
Well, that would be George Lucas and Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the time, we're talking early 80s that those movies first came out, Raiders of the Lost Ark, before his name was synonymous with that kind of movie, because the first one's not Indiana Jones and it's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yep.
But by that point, Spielberg, Lucas, what had become their status in American pop culture?
I think Star Wars: New Hope predates that, and so that in of itself is a huge cultural phenomenon, especially with today being Star Wars Day.
Yeah.
This movie got a whole holiday around it. But Indiana Jones, at least in my opinion, set up an interest in archaeology and history for a lot of people. I can't tell you how many people I've gone through college with who love the movies, were inspired by the movies. I myself inspired by the movies, and now here I am as the director of a museum. I joke that growing up as a kid, I always wanted to be Indiana Jones, but I ended up as of course, now I'm forgetting
his partner.
His partner.
He's like, he'll blend in. You'll never find him.
Exactly. The museum director.
I'm blanking on it too, but I know who you mean.
Yeah.
And it's like, and those kind of characters are definitely needed in that, because Indiana Jones is, it's Harrison Ford. So it's like, you need, he's a, maybe what you should do is get a whip and swing into the office every day with a hat on and be like, I'm here.
I went as Indiana Jones to a Halloween party last year, so I have all that stuff. I could do it.
So did I. I went one time, but I tried to take it one step further. I went as Indiana Jones on VHS.
Oh,
and I
okay.
made a sticker that said, "Please be kind, rewind."
Oh, that's
and another
fantastic.
one that had like a clearance price on it, but nobody seemed to understand.
My big thing was I bought a actual movie, like, recreation prop of the Holy Grail, and that's what I was drinking out of the entire night.
Water. And,
of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's I was talking just a few moments ago about George Lucas in Star Wars.
Right.
And Steven Spielberg was definitely part of that group of Lucas, Spielberg, De Palma, Scorsese, Coppola. That was part of that group of young filmmakers. It's hard to imagine them young now because they're not. But
Right.
you know, for that era, they were young filmmakers. But the stories take place in the 30s, right? And so, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't think George Lucas was alive in the 30s. So, for him, it's a lot like the Star Wars films because he's pulling from Flash Gordon, he's pulling from Buck Rogers, the serial of the 30s and 40s, and presenting them to a modern audience. And Indiana Jones is the same way. It's like we're being presented
With like the adventurers and
right.
yeah.
As, you know, he's a Nazi-hating, you know, all-American archaeologist who was also willing to take risks to keep these artifacts. Some of them have at least perceived power.
Right.
Actually, all of them turn out to have pretty incredible power.
Exactly, yeah.
Out of the wrong hands, right? He wants to make sure that they are at the least just kept away from people like the Nazis,
Right.
and then later on the Soviets, when, you know, the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Where do you see that as connected to Lucas in any way? Do you think that that's a commonality between Star Wars of kind of like being almost like a torchbearer of those kind of values that came from the World War II era?
Yeah, I mean, you can see the World War II history. I don't know too much about George Lucas himself, but I feel like he's a big World War II buff because, I mean, obviously you look at Indiana Jones, it's right in your face. The first three movies, he's fighting the Nazis. But even in Star Wars, you can see the symbolism in Star Wars with like the stormtroopers and kind of how the regime is basically the Nazi regime.
The uniforms on the
are very
officers are very
and so
Nazi-looking.
You can see the World War II history.
The dogfight video, you know, they use footage of dogfights to make the TIE fighters flying around.
Yeah, yep.
And, you know, let's involve Spielberg in this as well. To my knowledge, I'm pretty sure Spielberg's father was a World War II veteran. And his first movie making when he was a kid was with his buddies donning all their dad's World War II uniforms and helmets and stuff like that, and making World War II movies in their backyard.
Yeah, and he's got one of the greatest World War II movies of all time with Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah,
so.
and that was almost like, and I think I saw him interview with him. Like, that was full circle for him. Of like, that's how I got. So from World War II comes these really great stories, tropes, themes of good versus evil.
Right.
In reality, I'll never forget my brother saying to me one time, we were watching the History Channel, which back in the 90s was
Actually history. And,
right. Well, actually history, but all they did was talk about the Third Reich, and you know,
Yeah.
it was one of those many things about that, and they showed like Hitler's, you know, mountaintop lair, the eagle's nest,
Yep.
and I said to him, I said, you know, what's with these like comic book size, you know, he seems like a comic book villain. My brother turns to me, he's like, where do you think the comic books got the idea for that? I'm like, oh.
Exactly. I mean,
You know?
we're here at Free Comic Book Day, and I can already think of like a whole bunch of, you know, villains that were inspired by that. The one that's coming to mind right now is Red Skull.
Yep.
From the Captain America
I think I
comics.
saw him right there, actually.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, but yeah,
Because he was a Nazi in those
yeah,
Captain American comics, I think, right? But
yeah.
then the movie, the most recent movie,
Hydra in the movies are a little bit different, but I seem to recall some of the original like Batman comics. The Joker, huge villain for Batman, but is helping these Nazis in one of these comics, and then finds out, oh wait, they're actually Nazis, and then turns on them, and then the Joker in the sense becomes the good guy because he's like, I might be a villain, but I'm an American villain,
Right.
and like yeah,
it's like, well, at least we have those guys. The Rocketeer has an element of that too.
Yeah.
With the mobsters are, you know, they're bad guys because they're mobsters, but then at the very end when the Nazis show up, you know, they turn back and say, well, we're, you know, go get him, kid, like we're Americans first.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and it's like those are the attitudes that Lucas and Spielberg were growing up with.
Right.
I think they were both born before or during World War II, so they were steeped in that attitude. And by the time you get to the 1970s, again, I was just talking about this with Star Wars. It's with the bicentennial. It's like people were thinking a lot more about American values, and all that hope and promise of a post World War II era had definitely faded away.
Right.
And Star Wars was so successful because it broke things down simply again, good versus bad.
Right.
Indiana Jones repeats that again. It's like good versus bad. Like you're gonna root for Indy no matter what. He's not an anti-hero.
Right.
He's a hero, right? And so that kind of character creation, and comparing Star Wars, you're right. Like it doesn't take any time at all to start seeing those fascist motifs in Star Wars.
A lot of the same symbolism.
But it's straightforward in Indiana Jones.
Exactly.
It's like at least the first and the third movie. It's like he even says, "Oh, I hate these guys." It's like,
oh yeah.
And so it's like Spielberg and Lucas are taking those very necessary attitudes into the 80s, and kind of again being the torchbearer, the Byzantine Empire of Americanism, right?
Yep.
So it's. Do you think that either one of them have? Because I was just showing a Spielberg movie in my class the other day. I was showing the 2005 War of the Worlds. And I love that movie. I think it's underrated.
Yep.
We watched The Terminal in another class by the end of the year because once again, everything's a primary source. That's how I teach through pop culture. I always explain him as master filmmaker. That Spielberg is a master. Lucas. I don't know. He kind of dropped the ball after a while.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to feel about that. Spielberg, I don't think you can argue that he's not. Lucas, I mean, the Star Wars movies are amazing. The prequel movies. At first, I don't think a lot of people really understood it, but I think it's had a lot of resurgence in the past few years, where people get it now and see what Lucas was trying to do and what the actors were trying to do. So I would say, I mean, it can't be understated what Star Wars and Indiana Jones did. Or Star Wars more, I'm going to say, unfortunately. For culture, pop culture.
They've made more Indiana Jones movies, including last year. I didn't get around to seeing that one. Was it good? Did you see it?
Admittedly, I have not seen the Dial of Destiny, and that is because I'm a purist in that I love the first three. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was a little rough for me, and I was worried about what was going to happen with the fifth one, and so I still have not seen it.
And I think that it's a very ironic thing because it's that dynamic that I think is what Lucas was opposed to all the way through. Like because when he set out making movies, he wanted to be an independent filmmaker.
Right.
And technically, Star Wars is, Lucasfilm is an independent company.
Yeah.
And so it is like the most expensive or most valuable independent movie it's ever made.
Yeah.
Is those trilogies. But he didn't like just the oversaturation of it. And so that's why it's kind of funny that we are oversaturated with Star Wars.
We are. Because unfortunately, they got bought out by Disney.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love Disney World. I've been to the Star Wars land a million times.
So much
it's
fun.
So cool. But they're also hit or miss. The newer Star Wars movies, it's a coin flip if it's going to be something that people are going to really enjoy or just absolutely hate. And when they hit it good, they do, and otherwise it's, I don't know. Personally, I'm just like,
Because as they keep making these, I think the same thing happened with Star Wars when they kept making more of them to a lesser extent than what you're describing with Indiana Jones, where people were so excited to see Star Wars back in the theaters again that they're like, I'm going to go see them all.
Yep.
Whereas Indiana Jones, it was, I think
people were like, "Oh, another one of those? Like, do we really need them?"
I was excited. I know they're making a Indiana Jones video game. I'll be first in line to buy it.
Did you try the Indiana Jones ride at Disney?
Oh, the ride. So I have
Not the show. The show is
Yeah.
weird, but
Yeah, I love the show. I've never been to Disneyland where they have the
Yeah.
ride. Disney World only has the show.
oh, really? Okay.
And I've seen the show hundreds of times. My family, that's like our go-to vacation.
I say it's weird because it's like, at least the time I saw it,
Yeah.
they tried to pass it off that they were actually filming a movie there. 'Cause
Yeah,
MGM
it's supposed to be
and
like
we're
an interactive
We know
thing.
you're not. Like,
Yeah.
just show us the stunts. It's fine.
Last time that I went, they got rid of it, and I'm wondering if it was just because of the pandemic, and now following the pandemic, they're just not going to bring it back. But there was an interactive element where they actually brought people from the audience out onto the stage, and they became like the extras in the
Oh my
back
God,
of the scene.
that'd be terrifying.
And I did get to do that when I
Oh,
was
really?
like 13. It was so cool. 'Cause
What
I
was
like,
what was your role?
we were one of the people shopping in the market when Indiana Jones and Marion Ravenwood are fighting the guys, like the acrobatic guys with the
Yeah.
swords and everything in the market from Raiders. So like we're the people in the back just like cheering and like ooh ah when there's like people fighting and then people falling off of buildings and stuff. So it was very cool. And as a kid, I mean that just cemented my
I was going
my
to say,
love
I
for
bet
Indiana
that
Jones and
had it
history.
not been for that experience, I don't think your love of that character would be quite as huge, right?
Yep.
That you got to be part of it directly. Well, I thank you so much for being part of this directly. This has
Yeah,
been a
thank
lot of
you so
fun,
much for inviting me.
and I think we did a pretty good explanation about Indy, and now I get to add one more thing to the archive.
I think
thank
so.
you
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Popular culture, by definition, connects and unites us, and proves that people of different backgrounds, in fact, have a lot in common with one another. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, at least in part, for that reason. If it connects with you and you'd like to add to it, or any of the podcast episodes, just visit everything-history.com and search for the Everything as a Primary Source project, which can be found in the classroom section of the website. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Be sure to rate and share this podcast wherever you are listening to it now, and follow Everything as a Primary Source on social media, including YouTube and especially Instagram. Thank you for listening to the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source.